Hi, I'm Mariayah Kaderbhai from BAFTA and welcome to this Q&A for 76 days. I am joined by director Hao Wu from New York, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah. Welcome, Hao.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
First of all, congratulations on the documentary. I feel like it's a little bit strange to be talking about it kind of a year after you went into production with it and the world still being in a similar state and condition to kind of the initial thought. So just it seems like you and the team got access somewhere in Wuhan super quickly, and I'm wondering how kind of that was even achieved.
Yeah, so I think I was in Shanghai to visit my family for Chinese New Year a year ago when Wuhan was put under lockdown. So even though I wasn't in Wuhan myself, just observing how the rest of China voluntarily shut down as soon as Wuhan was put under official lockdown, and witnessing Shanghai, China's largest city of 21 million people, being eerily empty. There's nobody on the street, very few cars even driving by. So that was really shocking. So as soon as I came back to New York, where I live, in early February, a US network approached me and asked me if I wanted to make a film about this outbreak, because at that time it wasn't a global pandemic yet. So I jumped on and said, I really wanted to find out what happened, what's happening in Wuhan, and what made it so bad. And even though later on this US network dropped out, I continued independently. So what I did was, in early February, I reached out to filmmakers as well as investigative journalists who were in Wuhan at that time, who had started filming. I talked to over a dozen filmmakers. Most of these are very young filmmakers because in the early stage of this lockdown, because very little was known about how dangerous or transmissible the virus was, a lot of my filmmakers of similar age as I am, they are afraid of going because they all have they all live with their parents or they have kids at home, so they were afraid. So I talked to a lot of the young people, right? A lot of young people who they just either they're local filmmakers based in Wuhan, or they just went in there as soon as they heard about the lockdown because they wanted to document. They were fearless. They wanted to document history in making. That's how I found. Among these filmmakers, some were filming inside the hospitals, and others were filming, following volunteers who's keep the city running, as well as some were filming inside people's apartment, people being trapped inside their apartment compound. They couldn't get out due to the lockdown. Then I met my two co-directors online. I had never known them before, introduced by some common friends. As soon as I saw their footage, I was really awed and shocked because up until then, I had read so much about the outbreak in Wuhan. Also, there have been some cell phone video being shared on social media, but really like my two co-directors footage really, I feel like brought me right there into the eye of the storm. So I could really feel, at least in the early stage, the panic, the fear, a lot of raw emotions. So I just talked to them and said, let's work together. I guess on some level, I think, I'm extremely lucky because I think even up until now, I still haven't been able to see that much really like long form visual storytelling from anywhere in the world, essentially. But also, it's also kudos to my co-director who really took a lot of personal risk to start filming that early.
Yeah, kind of in terms of that personal risk, I imagine it was, I couldn't believe the access that they actually had and kind of being entrenched within that hospital, and how easy is that access? I imagine, especially kind of in China and in Wuhan, there must have been a lot of formalities and legislation in place to kind of not allow that kind of access.
On one hand, absolutely, it's hard to get access because the government restrict access during the lockdown to the hospital to medical workers, patients, and reporters. So my two co-directors, they are both reporters. One, Wei Shi Chen, he's a video reporter for Esquire, China, but he wasn't sent by the magazine to go there and cover because he's an aspiring filmmaker himself. He's made short documentaries on his own in the past. So as soon as he heard about the lockdown, he, through some personal connection, he embedded himself with a medical team that was being sent from elsewhere in China to go support local hospitals in Wuhan. So he embedded himself with that medical team. So because he showed up at the hospital with a medical team, and the hospital thought, oh, he's being hired by the medical team. Yeah, he's part of them. So he was allowed access. My other co-director, Anonymous, he's a photojournalist working for a local newspaper. So he actually has done, he's worked there for over 10 years. So he knew a lot of the hospital to begin with. He had legitimate reason to be there taking photos, doing reporting. But the straight thing is, in China, a lot of time we talk about censorship or control, right? But actually the decision making, in many circumstances, localized. For example, whether to grant anybody, including reporters, access or not, is made at a hospital, individual hospital level. Some hospitals who are the hardest hit, overwhelmed by patients, and also some of the hospitals have many of their medical staffs infected. Those ones were, they didn't give any access. But with the 4 hospitals my 2 co-directors shot at, those hospitals, I think, especially in the early days, these hospitals, they actually wanted reporter to come in and report, so the outside world could learn how overwhelmed they were, how dire the situation it was, so they could help secure donated PPEs, masks, and hazmat suit. Back in February, I think the entire Chinese diaspora all over the world were trying to secure masks and send them to Wuhan to support the local medical team. So they have their own reasons. Sometimes they want to allow access. To be honest, the worst place that I think it's like, I was in New York, I was filming in New York in late March, trying to gain access to the hospital. It was almost impossible because even though there's no government control, but we do have a lot of privacy laws, as well as the hospital, the big conglomerates here in New York, they all have their liability concern. They didn't want to make sure, they didn't want to make the filmmaking lawsuit, right? Coming after that. But in China, as soon as my 2 co-directors were allowed to go inside the contamination zone, because nobody had the time and energy to watch over the shoulders, they could just roam freely, pretty much, inside the wards and to film anything.
So obviously you've mentioned one of the directors by name. One of them has remained anonymous, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that kind of, obviously in terms of protection, but what were the kind of reasons for the anonymity?
I think it's basically his own concerns about any potential liability, because obviously the focus of the film, what the film could be, keep on evolving during production and post-production. In post-production, we discussed, we decided to make really humanistic film, just focus on the human story rather than trying to bring politics into it. But there's a long conversation we could have about that creative decision. But even then, until the very end, Anonymous was nervous for a couple of reasons. One, he's only worked in a state-owned newspaper environment. He's never had a job elsewhere. And secondly, China right now is still tightly controlling its COVID narrative. Even though this film does not talk explicitly about politics, but in terms of what if the government doesn't like the way we portray the early chaos or the immense tragedy? What if they don't like it? Because you never know. When we were making this film, because of these concerns, we were really only 5 people in the world knew about this existence of this project. So that's another. The third concern was, in China right now, there's a growing numbers of internet trolls who are ultra nationalistic. They basically see anything that portrays China in any slightly negative light as attacking the Chinese government, attacking the Chinese nation. So they will come after you, just like the trolls here. They will go after you and hope to damage your livelihood. So Anonymous was really concerned about that as well. So in the end, he opted to remain anonymous. But since then, I think his feeling a lot more relaxed just because as the film traveled worldwide at virtual festivals, a lot of Chinese people overseas have been able to watch it. They really identify with the kind of emotion we're trying to convey. And I think he's feeling a lot more relaxed right now.
So the emotion that you are trying to convey, you kind of said that, it could have gone in a different direction. It could have kind of covered the politics of the situation as well as a kind of personal effect of it. At what stage did you decide that this was kind of 100% the human story and the human effect of COVID on the people of Wuhan? And was that kind of from the daily rushes coming through? And was it daily rushes coming through? How did you remote direct? Because I imagine that must have had a whole heap of complications in itself.
Absolutely. So I think really quickly to address your earlier question. So we made that decision gradually in post-production. During production, it was pretty chaotic because the two of them actually didn't know each other. I've never met them before. So we had to gradually, quickly build up like kind of trust and basically over phone calls. And what they did was, because they have to leave their equipment inside the contamination zone every day. They couldn't just take it in and out. So every night, they would take the disk and upload the footage onto a cloud service in China as a backup. And then since they share the logins with me, anytime the upload is completed, I will get an alert. I can download the footage in New York. But usually I will be a few days late, at least 2 or 3 days late, just because the Great Firewall make the download very slow from New York. And then I will review the rushes, and then I will try to have discussion with them about which character might be the main character, which character to follow, which aspect to follow. But to be honest, though, I think other than giving them some production tips and some general direction, so what to cover, they made most of the sort of decision on the ground because it was so chaotic. Anytime I found one character might be interesting, that character might, deteriorate so much and he or she could not speak anymore, or be transferred to another hospital, or even pass away. So my two co-directors really made a lot of the on-the-ground decision about what to film, how much to film. In doing production, I also asked them, go outside the hospital, film more volunteers, get a better sense of the city. Also, I asked them, through some producer of my Chinese producer, we found, we got in touch with some of the early whistleblower doctors in China. So my co-director also went to film them. And also there was a Chinese dissident who's suing the government because his father contracted COVID in the hospital in early January for some other minor surgery. So he's super angry, he's suing the government. So we did a lot more filming, but in the end, as we were trying to put the film together, it just felt like what they shot on the ground, the observational footage, was so precious and so unique. Anytime we because with the other people, by the time we got in touch with them, we could mostly just film interviews, sit-down interviews. It wasn't not compelling, it's all talking heads. And so stylistically, it doesn't jive with the observational footage we had. And secondly, is that every time we start talking about politics, it somehow doesn't really address the rest of the footage, right? What the rest of the footage was telling us. So it's just like every time just jerking viewers away from the emotional verite scenes. So in the end, it was like, let's just forget about it, because we know other filmmakers making film addressing the political aspect as well. So it's like, let's focus on what's best coming out of footage. Let's talk about the universal aspect of how to survive a pandemic. Because by that time, by early April, I had been in touch with filmmakers in Madrid, in Milan, in South Korea, and also I started filming here. Is that everybody I talked to seems like the same story were happening over and over again. So that's also inspired us to say, even though what we filmed was so uniquely Wuhan and China, it's the early days of the pandemic, but the story, the kind of human connection, how we support each other, and the fear, the panic, those are universal. Let's just play that one up.
Talking then kind of stylistically going on, we've made some really great, bold stylistic choices in terms of, kind of not having kind of music tracks, like you've mentioned, not having those talking heads in there, not having that news footage, but just it really kind of the heartbeat of the film being kind of the pace within within that hospital and just the kind of the surroundings of Wuhan. How how confident were you in those choices? That again, like you said, come as the footage came on, or was that in the edit, you decided that I need to strip this away?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in early production we were like lost because the way they shot, other than the old grandpa, like the grandpa who always wander in the hallway, right? We from the early on in production we knew he would be a main character just because he's always wandering. And my co-director,
Such great personality.
yeah, personality, he's always there. We film a lot of footage of him. We knew we can build a sort of like a through line based on his character. But with the others, because it was so chaotic in the early days, my co-director filmed a lot more doctors, a lot more patients. But then very few of them actually feel like in the traditional documentary sense, we have enough footage to build a character arc for that. So we were stuck at the very beginning. So what I did was just forget about it. I just dived in and tried to pick out the scenes that most moved me, like strike an emotional chord with me. And then I feel like I'm, cutting all these gems of individual scenes, but I didn't know how to connect them. Obviously, there's traditional ways of documentaries, either using talking heads to connect them, using news clips to introduce the bigger background, or even maybe to some way track the progression of the outbreak to connect the scenes. But then we experiment with that. But anytime we use that, it's always like jerking us out of the verite moment. So we had a lot of discussion. All of a sudden I remember Frederick Wiseman. I haven't watched his film for a while. So I went back to watch his film. I also went back to watch my just trying to get inspiration from other filmmakers and other films, like my friend Ramona Diaz's Motherlands, about maternity, largest maternity hospital in the Philippines, and also like my friend Kirsten Johnson's Camera Person. So just watch a lot of film. So as soon as I realized, oh, other films have done very effectively with no explanation, just throw the viewers inside the scene, let them observe, let them pick up whatever they can. They've done it successfully. I can do that as well. So I started trying to build rough assembly together. We actually did test screenings, and the feedback has been phenomenal because the power of the footage, because we strip everything out, the power of the footage itself just stood out even more. So yeah, after the first round of rough cut screening, virtually, obviously, so we knew we're on the right track.
Yeah, after obviously you must have had hundreds of hours of footage to go through. What do you think that it taught you the most, to kind of about a human being's capacity to kind of deal with something so unprecedented? Do you think that you've learned something that about human capability that you didn't know beforehand?
Yeah, it's been an emotional journey for me, at least personally. I mean, for my co-directors as well, right? Because they were filming life and death on a daily basis. It was a lot of stress for them emotionally. But for me, when I'm remote directing and also editing, I feel like on some level, it's a very personal process because my grandpa passed away in March, and I wasn't able to say goodbye to him because of the travel restriction between US and China. And then to even secure a hospital bed, he died of cancer, but even to secure a hospital bed for him, because most of the hospital beds were reserved for COVID patients in China in March, in February. So it was a harrowing process. But then so many people, so many volunteers and doctors help us. And to get him inside the hospital. So for me, going through editing, I had a lot of guilt, I had a lot of sadness. But so for me to watch how the medical workers could be kind to each other to help the patients who were, especially the elders, who were dying essentially alone, right? And fearful and alone, away from their family. So that was extremely personally moving for me. It's almost like a self-therapy. Secondly, I think my friends and I, we keep on talking about, I don't know about the situation in the UK, but in China, there is a long-running conflict or stress between patients and healthcare industries, because it was too expensive, and also the healthcare resources are extremely limited in China. So the patients never feel like they're getting enough care, attentive care from the doctor. There have been violence against medical workers, increasingly so in the past couple of years. But in this film, it's not there. So I mean, I've talked to my friends and said, what's going on here? Why is it? I talked to my co-director. Why is it like all what we see mostly in the footage, at least what they capture, is people, human beings, be so kind to each other. I think in the end, definitely one reason is that the Chinese government is paying for everything. It's everybody who they didn't have to pay a cent. So that's one thing that take off the stress point. The second thing I think really speaks to, in times of crisis, how we have the capability to step up to the plate and to be nice, to do self-sacrifice, to help each other. By no means everybody's like that in Wuhan. By no means. Even in China, we hear people discriminate against people from Wuhan. Anybody, in the early days, anybody traveling from Wuhan to other cities, sometimes the hotels will even say, you cannot stay here because they're But I guess, for me and for my co-directors, what they capture, what moved us, what these sort of like these kind of little details of kindness, these kind of little moments of hope. So that's why I guess, I still think the lessons for me is that we have the capability. We do have the capability.
I think it's kind of also, you show kind of so many of those healthcare professionals that have come from different regions and provinces to work there. And I can't remember what one of the nurses, God, what did she say? It was
I have a hero's dream.
Huh?
I have a hero's dream.
Yes, that one. But no, but there was also what it was just there was a little bit. It was initially a misinterpretation on my part, because it seemed that there was a slight level of excitement that she had to kind of be there, but then you realize it's not excitement, it's the preparation that those people have been kind of studying and doing for their whole life. It kind of finally is the way to kind of be able to help people and really be able to fulfill kind of what they've been working for their entire lives in a way.
Absolutely.
We have a question. Someone's people are just asking where the documentary can be streamed in the UK. I'm not sure if you know the answer to that, but if you don't, we can definitely find out.
I have the answer. It's gonna start Dog Wolf on demand. It's gonna start allow rentals of the films starting this January 22nd, the day before the 1-year anniversary of the lockdown.
Talking about kind of online streaming then, and maybe China, I think I saw someone that in China who's on Weibo, which is the kind of Twitter equivalent, who had a large number of followers, tweeted about the documentary in a really obviously great positive light. So it's had a little bit more awareness in China than perhaps it had done before. And kind of just wanted to speak to you about kind of what is the awareness of the documentary in China, and will it be shown there?
So with China, we've been when we premiered at Toronto International Film Festival last September, we were just trying to be really, really careful, because we really don't want Anonymous to be impacted in any way. So we had been declining all interview requests from Chinese language media, but because right now we've been doing the awards campaign here in the U.S., and the Variety recently named 76 Days as a strong contender for the Oscar in the Oscar campaign. So some influencer on Chinese Weibo, it's a Twitter equivalent, as you mentioned, with 19 million followers. He picked that one up. He's posted the trailer, our official trailer, on his account just a little over a week, 8 days ago, and it just went viral just because it's the 1-year anniversary this month of the lockdown. And then since we've been doing a lot of virtual theatrical release in the US, I guess pirated copy, because it's all virtual, it's easy to pirate a film. And pirated copies started popping up all over China. So it took us completely by surprise. I mean, on one hand, we feel happy that at least a lot of people, at least based on the pirated copy or the trailer they watch, and it evoke a lot of emotional responses in them. Most people are positive, but there have been, like we fear, there have been these kind of patriotic, nationalistic trolls that have started attacking me. They found out my previous film, which is a Netflix original short called All in My Family, is about my journey to have kids through surrogacy. So, I mean, they started attacking me on Chinese social media as a supporter, quote unquote, of surrogacy, and also as a, queer filmmaker. And, these are personal attacks. So yeah, it's weird. But in terms of China distribution plan, we don't have any plan because one of the co-director licenses footage to a state-owned distribution company. Oh, sorry, film studio as well. They're making their own. They incorporating the footage into another China-produced documentary film. So I just want to we got the international rights to the footage and they got the domestic rights. So we don't have any plan to release that.
We've got another question. Actually, it leads on from something that you've said. They said, film's amazing, but they wanted to know how different it is from your other work.
Very different. All in My Family is a personal documentary. I filmed it. I'm also being filmed. I appeared on camera. I had a lot of personal narration to explain my emotional journey. With my other film, People's Republic of Desire, it's about live streaming celebrities, internet celebrities in China. It's almost like Black Mirror. It's very fast cutting and a lot of music. And it's like a sci-fi film. So this one, 76 Days, is really a big departure from me. I've never done pure verite film before. I never let my shots linger this long. Some of the shots linger for 10, 20 seconds. I've never done it before. But I feel like I feel like I'm the type of filmmaker, I feel like my crafts always serve the story, whatever the story demands.
Yeah, but some of those longer shots really do serve the story in the sense that, as you said, we've seen so many over the last year. I'm sure all around the world, everyone's seen the news reports and everyone's seen the facts and the figures and the graphs and the charts and everything. But it's so rare to see and kind of be in, a situation in a hospital for that amount of time and to have that level of access to really see it from, the real human perspective of it. Helen Jerome is saying, thanks for the documentary, which must have been very harrowing to film and to edit. Were there sections that you had to leave out as they were too harrowing to show? And another little second question within there, what are you planning to work on next?
Okay, so the first question, I think there are things we left out, mostly obviously when we first put the film together, it was a lot longer. I think it's almost 3 hours, and we gradually had to cut it down. The primary reason is to, as a filmmaker, I don't want to repeat the same story because the early cut was more like really like a group ensemble. It's really hard to track character because there were so many. So in the editing process, we gradually have to cut out some of the minor characters that their stories, their soundbite don't really stand out, leave a strong emotional impression because viewers will not be able to remember them anyway. And secondly, we actually consciously try to cut out some more harrowing shots. Like, we definitely shot a lot more dead bodies, being wrapped up, being wheeled away. But in the end, we just decided, no. I mean, in the opening scene, we already see one dead body, and that's already harrowing enough. We don't have to.
That rips your heart out. That daughter running, oh God, it just rips your heart out.
Absolutely. So just we need to be respectful and not to show too much because we don't want to be exploitative, right, of the stories, but we want to show leaving enough respect for the character. It's once again because the way the filmmaker were covering so many different characters, for each character we actually didn't have a lot of footage, a lot of scenes. So what we left out is more like in the early days experimenting. Do we want to keep this character versus that character?
And there's really obviously the balance as well, kind of having that kind of extreme kind of heartache at the beginning, but then there are positivities and kind of ending on, you know, on levels of certain levels of highs as well, kind of, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely an emotional arc, right? We're trying to build an emotional arc. You're at the absolute bottom at the very, very beginning, which is something I've never done before, having the film in such a dramatic, emotional down note, and then you just try to bring the film up in the middle. There's ups and downs, just as any patients, their own physical condition, ups and downs, and then you keep on going up, but then you wrap it up by collectively grieving about our loss, you bring it down again. So yeah, we were very conscious that we need to maintain our arc, but this way of having almost a climax moment at the very beginning, I've never done it before. I wasn't sure it worked, but I guess it does. So I'm working on a couple new films, research, and mostly doing development because it's hard. It's hard, even like for documentary filmmakers. When we do research, we usually have to fly around, travel around to meet with the people. We were thinking about filming, but right now with the pandemic, it's been really, really challenging. So I'm developing both narrative as well as documentary projects at the moment.
Thank you so much, Hao. Thank you for bringing us 76 Days. And if people haven't had a chance to watch it, it will be on Dogwoof on Demand in February, as you've said. I hope you and your family stay safe, and I hope you get out there in the world soon with your next project.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
great
you.
chatting with you.
Take care. You too. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.